space in your schedule.
No problem. Thank you for having me. I always enjoy it.
Yeah. So for those who are just signing on and starting to watch, this is a part of our Conversations for the Common Good series that we're having at University Presbyterian Church. We really value addressing issues that are important, issues that are important as a church, but also issues that are important as a city. And in this series, we're looking at specifically difficult issues, and we've reached out to people who are leading in our city in working on these. And so this week we're looking at environmental justice. And this morning in the service that aired, I interviewed both Keyshawn White and Marcel, and we talked about the air quality monitoring project that Keyshawn started with Marcel, which is an amazing project, and we're here to continue talking about that and how that works. But maybe as we start, Marcel, can you just say a little bit about what it is you do and how you know Keyshawn?
Definitely. So my name is Marcel Woodruff. There's a little bit of I'm gonna echo. Should I mute myself or something?
You're not echoing in what I'm hearing.
Okay. So my name is Marcel Woodruff. I'm a native of Fresno. I've been doing youth organizing and work and mentoring for about 15 years. And through doing that work, I met a young man by the name of Omega Else, who I worked with since he was maybe 7 years old, who happened to be the cousin of a young man by the name of Keyshawn White and a young man by the name of Keon White. And so as part of my mentoring, I would take kids to baseball, batting cages, to black bears, and to movies. And so one particular day, Omega was like, "Hey, can my cousins come?" And I was like, "I don't know your cousins." I asked their parents. And so he debates with me. And so these two twins, Keon and Keyshawn White, end up coming to the movies with me. And we hit it off. I really enjoyed their company. They were really positive kids. And so at this point in time, they were 13 years of age. And so after that, they kind of kept calling me, want to hang out. And so now they're 19. But it was just that. It was this another young man who liked hanging out with me. Brought his cousins to the carnival, and they kind of stayed connected with me and became like little nephews, little sons.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know that piece of all of your guys' story.
All right.
Yeah. So Keyshawn ended up embarking on this project to measure air quality in Fresno, especially in Southwest Fresno. But one of the questions that we didn't really fully address in this morning's was, why does this matter? What are the effects of poor air quality?
Definitely. Why does it matter? So I wasn't even really big on air quality at all at first. I'm a technology guy, so my background's in computer science, and so I was just trying to teach kids a vocation so that they could, have like a skill set moving into like the workforce with. And so Keyshawn, he challenged me and he said, I heard the statistic. I heard that people live 22 years less in my community than they do in other communities. And I think that there are particular reasons for that. He said, you want us to teach us how to code? How about you just give us like space to breathe? And I was like, man, that's actually a good challenge. And so I learned. And so he and I studied air quality. We learned that it was more than just like you think it affects your lungs, but so air quality, it does affect your lungs, affects your breathing. It can trigger asthma, but it also can affect your brain. It can cause brain illness, brain injury, and it can decrease concentration rates or your focus rates, and it also does creates heart conditions. It also can actually impact your heart. So during the course of Keyshawn's experiment or his learning, we learned that two of the most chronic diseases in Fresno are actually correlated to air quality, so which is heart disease and chronic lung. So he actually kind of connected the dots there. He says, in this area, people are living less. And then he said the air quality is worse, and people are dying at increased rates because of issues that are connected to poor air quality. So it really did become an issue of life and death, and beyond that, quality of life as a whole. Like, because you can't concentrate, how is the kids supposed to focus in school? People focus at work, and so on and so forth. So it really is a whole life thing.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to hear. We've also talked a little bit about the fact that there's intersecting environmental issues, especially that impact Southwest Fresno. And I'm wondering if you could share a bit about what are some of those other intersecting issues?
Definitely. So right now we're leaning into something called the Don Initiative, which the air quality in Southwest Fresno has been impacted for years, for decades, because of its arrangement. So it's developed like a triangle where you have like interstate, you have highways. On the other end of it, you have agriculture. You have like a lot of pesticides there's a lot of farming stuff. So and even when they do their cropping, they kick up a lot of dust. And there's also industry, like just like factories that are burning things, and so it kind of creates this triangle in which there's like a lot of pollution. And so things that we're seeing with that is, there's like what Keyshawn pointed out, the decreased lifespan, but there's also issues around like preterm birth, right? So and if so, individuals in Southwest Fresno or Black women in Fresno, like specifically, so Southwest has typically been a Black area. They have preterm birth rates that are equivalent to like third world nations, right? And so when you have like this pollution effect, you get something called like a heat island, where not only is the air more toxic there, but it's actually physically hotter there. It's hotter, and it creates more stress in the environment. It's just a overall more unhealthy space to live in. And so you get issues like asthma triggering, you get preterm birth rates, you get higher rates of stroke, which kind of goes into the brain disease that air quality hearts, and you get higher rates of like of heart disease as well. And so those are a lot of the intersectional things. Well, just quality of life, health stuff like brain disease, heart defects, but there's also stuff like preterm birth, and you have like a lot of early onset of like asthma, which can be fatal. I had friends who lost their lives due to asthma. And I didn't connect the dots until I was working with Keyshawn. Like, man, he lived right next to this factory, his whole life, and he died at, roughly 27 years of age. Right. And so, so there is a lot of intersectionality just in terms of all the body and the generations that are kind of coming out.
Yeah. I received a specific question from somebody on the Facebook page this morning who wants to know, and you can decide how you want to answer this. What businesses have been identified as polluters in Fresno?
So what businesses? So developers are polluters. So when they go, they develop, they kick up a whole lot of dust. So I'm not sure, maybe she wants specific businesses. I can just kind of give you general fields of work or employment. So developers, they kick up a lot of dust during the hours of 8 to 5 when they're working, and sometimes like in Fresno, the airflow isn't that strong because we are a basin, and so that dust kind of can just stick around for a longer period of time because it doesn't get blown out. So ag is a contributor, but there have been some cool laws around like just when they can spray pesticides, when they can spray, and so really working a lot of policy around like the ag stuff. But ag is a contributor, and it's also your factories there's a big dairy factory in Southwest Fresno. There's a dairy factory in Tower District, so like a lot of your factories are doing that kind of stuff too. And I mean, and also there's just industry because we're a basin. I know Fresno's gotten pollutants from like LA, from San Francisco, and even from Japan. When that factory had that explosion, it came all the way across, right? And so and as a basin, it sits here. So if we don't get good airflow, it can stay here and add to the things that are already happening.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. I wonder if you want to speak a little bit to what are some of the how would you identify some of the causes of the fact that there is this triangle that's happening in Southwest Fresno specifically?
Redlining. I think that redlining is I would say redlining is a historical practice of zoning and housing in a particular way where typically people of color or people of lower class are forced to live in a particular district, and industries or interstate are kind of zoned to just happenstance be in those same areas. And so redlining, so like a lot of the issues that kind of like draw from Southwest Fresno happens when the 99 interstate, when Highway 99 was constructed.
Mm-hmm.
And people were pushed further west, and so you have that pollution source, and there's zoning around the factories that were there and agriculture that was there. And so I think a lot of what happens is just the way cities have been historically zoned. And so not only are there factories, industries, and like farming, but also like green space. Like there's like the heat island effect really happens because there haven't been enough parks zoned there. So like when you go to Southwest Fresno, like Hyde Park, was actually an old toxic waste dump, right? So they say, hey, that's good enough to be a park, you know. So you have no green space, you have parks that are toxic. There's the Maxey Park Center was just declared toxic recently, you know, and so you have this array, this combination of just really horrible environmental factors that get compounded up into a community. And I think that this historical practices of just zoning and not zoning the right things and forcing people to live pretty densely have created the problems that we face today.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. One of the things that as I think it has been important for me to hear about and just like remember and hit on as we talk about this is the difference between the air quality and what's happening environmentally between northeast Fresno and southwest Fresno.
Definitely.
And that what you just said is the reasons why.
Right, definitely. You know, and it's little known fact. So the way that air flows in Fresno is it does something called an eddy, where it does this circular thing, right? And so you have like a lot of pollutants coming up out of Southwest Fresno, but the air actually eventually pushes that to Northeast Fresno. So at nighttime, like around like your 9 or 10, like the air quality in those areas actually gets really bad. And so like it's really an issue that affects everybody. So we don't want these pollutants not being held accountable.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. I had no idea. One of the things that's really cool is that Keyshawn's project has been focusing on putting real-time air quality measurement into the hands of citizens and not just other entities. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the reason for that approach specifically.
So that happens. So Keyshawn begins his project, and at first he just wants to say, is there correlation between the lifespan difference and air quality in these areas, right? So he does that, he divides this thing into 4 zones, and he says, hey, there is a disparity. This place that lives 22 years less, they have 8 times worse air quality. And his big thing was people have to know this. He's a scientist, but he like loves people. So he's like, people need to know this. And so we start going to schools and educating them about what's happening. And so we're at Gaston Middle School, and we're doing an air quality test. So we take our drone, we put our monitor on, you fly it up 20 meters. That's how we had been doing it. And then right then and there, we get an air quality reading. Now, the RAND system at that day said the air quality, the AQI was about a 90, which means like if you're sensitive, you might have a problem today, but it's not too bad. And our real-time air quality monitoring at that point in time, it read 130. And so we're like, hey, you know, and this is exactly what we're talking about. Air quality has to be aggregated. You have to look at specific regions and contexts and geographies to know what it really is. And so we're telling the kids this, and this one young man, he's in 7th grade. He says, man, I don't want to die early. And so Keyshawn was like, man, I don't like to hear that, you know, because Keyshawn suffered tragedy in his life. And so he said, you know, what can we do? So he goes back to the drawing board, and he says, we have to give community members a way to monitor the air quality in their neighborhoods, in their houses, at their schools, that they can control, that they can readily access. And that's when he said, hey, he heard about these purple air monitors. He said, hey, Marcel, we need to get these purple air monitors everywhere. And we got to build an app so people can access the app and they can know what the air quality is wherever they are. And so it was really about community education and community empowerment.
Mm-hmm. And that's really cool that impacted him in that way, and to see that that's how that moved forward. I think my assumption is that there is some power to making more people aware of this, besides just making city officials aware of this. I don't know. What do you see there?
There is. I think that because if you really want to fight pollution, we've learned that you have to fight it at its source. And the people who are close, and people who are driving the source, and they're closest to the source. And so what we've learned is that if we give people the tools that they need to help us identify sources, to help us identify like what is causing these rampant pollution, then we can enter into dialogue, and we can work with them to help create solutions, and we can come with them to the city to say, hey, these are solutions that we developed, and this is what we need to happen. So like an example of that is there was a crematory in Fresno, and they were kind of burning at certain hours. And so one of our people's monitors was every day at this time it was going up, and they were like, hey, what is this? And so we had to go there and figure it out with them. And so it gives us that kind of power where we can, when we have these spikes or we have these consistencies, we can go in and say, hey, you know, what's happening here? We can take our drone, survey the land, and we can kind of come up with with identifying it, planning out solutions, and then creating strategies to actually go and make to the decision makers. So people are they are the process. They are the power.
Yeah, that's really cool. I want to go back a little bit because in the first interview and just now you mentioned the Dawn Initiative a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more about what that is.
Definitely. So the Dawn Initiative is an initiative that was birthed out of this movement to move the Darling rendering plant. So the Darling plant has been in Fresno for decades, and there's actually the plant that Keyshawn woke up smelling every morning because it makes the air stink. Like it smells like it's like rotten carcass. It makes it smell really bad. So you live in an area you smelled it before, and so he used to always wonder what that smell was, and it was actually the Darling rendering plant. And so a lot of advocates have been advocating for the Darling plant to be relocated. And so they finally gave up and said, you know what, we're fine, we'll relocate. And the city says, you know, we'll allocate some dollars to help you relocate. They did the math and realized, like, you know what, it's just better for us to close down. And so city was like, okay. And so advocates who pushed for them to relocate it said, okay, so you guys allocated money for them to move. How about you give that money back to the community so we can repair the harm that's been done over the decades by this plant? And so that gave birth to the Dawn Initiative, where the money that was initially designed for them to move is now coming back into the community so we can repair the damage done and we can educate people. And so Keyshawn will be a really big component of that. Him and his team of educating individuals in the community and monitoring to see like the decrease in pollution over time.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Who could people contact if they wanted to volunteer or get involved with that in some way? I know there's some people in our community, at least, who are involved in other environmentally related projects, and maybe there's a connection. Who would
Contact me. Or you can always go to Keyshawn's Facebook page. He has Keyshawn White Healthy Air Experiments on his Facebook, but everybody have Facebook. But I have a you can always contact me at Marcel Marcel at faithinthevalley.org. So I do a lot of Keyshawn's a young guy, so I do a lot of the quarterbacking and organizing for the guys so that people can kind of get connected. And so feel free to email me and I'll get people connected to what's happening.
Okay, that's cool. So you have a lot of different things that you've been involved in and that you speak on quite regularly. We've been talking about air quality, which you got involved in, and you were teaching. What were you teaching a class on originally? Computer
Programming. Yeah, computer programming. I'm teaching the kids how to make websites, make a little bit extra money.
Yeah, but then you also have a degree in theology.
I do. I have master's in divinity.
Yeah, and so one fun moment for me was when I first called you to ask about doing this interview. You said, "Do you want me to put on my scientist hat or my theologian hat?" And it's really awesome that you have all those hats, and I really respect your learning in all those areas. So maybe we could chat about some of the theological issues that come up around this.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I wonder what you would identify as some of the theological challenges or challenges with the church to addressing the topic of environmental justice.
Definitely. So Keyshawn actually his project actually stimulated a lot of my thinking around that, right? So I think that initially my working with Keyshawn and his group was to get them functioning like in society in a particular way, or to function to be competitive like in a capitalist space. And their pushback was, you know, we live in an environment where people even struggle to breathe, right? And so theologically, I had to kind of assess that. And so what I've kind of identified over time is that like theology in the West has really migrated away from from land and space, right? We don't really have a sense of understanding of like land and space, and that was like a really important or deep component of the Old Testament, right? It was the land was a gift, the land was part of the promise, and the land was something that you had to contend for in order for people to live viably and healthily, right? So it was kind of part of this divine plan. And I think that in divorcing ourselves from having like a real deep or consistent understanding of like land and how land connects to our bodies, we've created this voids and these vacuums that get replaced by where land gets replaced by like racism. You know, it gets replaced by classism and these other isms, right? And so Keyshawn's spurring of his project was basically, hey, when people hear that people in my community live 22 years less than they do in other communities, their first instinct is going to be to blame us. It's going to be to blame us about decisions that we make, to blame us about just things that we aren't doing. And so I want to identify something that's beyond our control, that's actually having this impact. And I think that was a really wise thing to do. And so as he did it, I began to see, like, you're right. You know, as we've understood theology or the divine, we have begun to divorce this divine will from the land and from creation and from environment, and how that is designed to actually sustain bodies and create healthy bodies so that we can kind of move in the world. And we've kind of placed emphasis on how people are performing in society, how people are functioning. And I think that was a loss. And so I really am grateful for Keyshawn to invite me backwards, you know, and say, how are we reimagining God and land, God and environment, and people's right to live and breathe in deeper ways?
Wow. It's hard for me to move on. Sometimes you say so much.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's good, but specifically the idea of replacing land with racism and classism, I feel like that hit me pretty hard. So that's helpful to hear. And I like, it kind of answers the question. It answers another question I had, which was that I've heard an idea in the church that people matter more than the environment. And so theologically, how do we push back against that, or how do we shift the conversation?
How do I respond to that? It's interesting. I think, you know, it's, for me, it kind of like people were put on the earth, and our initial role was like to steward, right? Like, okay, here's a man and woman, steward the earth, you know, like make it be fruitful, multiply, tend to the trees, tend to the garden type stuff. And it's like our initial kind of calling was to be stewards. But I think that what we've lost over time is how stewardship of the land, stewardship of the environment, stewardship of the earth is part of the divine plan to connect us to God, to help us understand God in deeper ways. Like, so as a technologist, I'm watching, like, in this whole COVID moment, and I'm seeing how our interaction, our engagement with the divine is changing, right? So we engaged the divine, you know, a year ago, we went to church and we sat there, and the word was preached to us. And now we engage the divine through Zooms, you know, and now how these sacred spaces are beginning to change. And I think that what we've lost in that, as technology has increased and kind of advanced, is how the environment, how the earth is actually designed to connect us to the divine. You know, how God has put things on the earth to nourish us, to sustain us, for us to enjoy, for us to love, as a way to understand Him more fully. And we've lost that. And I think that's the pushback. Like, this is that the earth is here as a gift, as a promise for us to steward, and that it does connect us to the divine. It teaches us about the divine, and we have a divine call to labor in it and be a part of it. And you know, and ultimately, you know, like, and us not doing that looks like loss of life. It looks, you know, it looks like people living unhealthily, have a lower quality of life, and not be able to access the divine and access God in the way that He intended. Right. So I think it connects to, like, evangelism, stewardship, and just our understanding of God as a whole.
Yeah. Not stewarding the land is actually killing people. And there is another theological idea that the earth was designed to slowly decay and, you know, just fall apart.
Yeah, those eschatology. Yeah, I mean, so that is kind of like we've done that, like, a lot of eschatological work, like in terms of, like, the end times. Things go more toward, like, this whole doom and gloom type of an existence. But I think there's a lot of emphasis on, like the new heavens, new earth, the already but not yet, in a way where, you know, God is not waiting for us to get there, but God is present here in the moment, and we are exemplifying or embodying His will for the entire world, or for entire people. So I think there's importance in the now to love as God loves, and that means loving people as God loves people, and loving the land as God loves. You know?
Yeah, because they're all related.
Exactly.
Like, not stewarding the land is killing people, but caring for the land is part of caring for the community and my neighbors.
Right, definitely. So.
I just want to be like, I'll be honest and vulnerable and share that at one point in my life, let's say like probably 10 years ago, maybe, I had a very specific idea and stereotype in my head about who the people were that cared about the environment. And that was usually like I kind of had this idea that this was somebody who really loved the trees and the earth. They were probably white, and they were maybe wealthy, and like kind of had the spare time to do advocacy. So I invite you to challenge the me 10 years ago about that idea.
All right. They're the Save the Panda people.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. With Keyshawn suffered from asthma, and he knew there's environmental connection to it. I think with me, so I'd be young, I'd play outside, and so when you're playing outside, kid, you can't keep going in and out the house, right? Because you'll get in trouble. You can't keep opening the door and closing the door. And so one of the things we learned to live off of was like the plum tree, the orange tree, right? And like the just the different, like the pomegranate tree, just the way that the environment had been arranged that allow us to play and have fun. And so for me, like the environment was, it's always been a part of my rhythm of life, right? So it's about, as it's sustained, my kids can have experiences that I had. I can continue to live and thrive and have fun. So I've always connected the environment to like fun, to like livelihood, and to thriving. And so anything that kind of goes against the environment is like, you don't want people to have fun. You don't want people to, to live fully, to breathe fully, right? And so that's always been my association. It hasn't really been about like, what's an issue I need to tackle. It's like, man, this is what the environment is, what gives like life and fullness and fun. And so we have to be a part of it. So, and that's something that came from my childhood, eating off the orange tree and not wanting to go inside because I had to stay inside type stuff, and how that's evolved over time as I got older.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my family members has told me about how her mom would lock the door and be like, "This is your outside tent. Like, you're just gonna stay out there."
Exactly. You got to live, right? So you see the orange trees, those plum trees come in handy there, right? So.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of parents in the pandemic like the sound of that idea right now.
Yeah, exactly. So go plant more trees, the fruit trees. That's what we want. We want more trees.
Yeah. What would you urge particular churches to do in to work towards environmental justice? Maybe just in general, because we've talked a bit about your specific project, but just in general.
I would encourage. I would encourage churches to go outside and really kind of experience nature and see see what's there, what can be improved upon, what's missing, and what's beautiful is already there and needs to be sustained. Right now we're doing this thing called like breathwork therapy, and so and it's been like really helpful for those of us who like suffer from like PTSD. So a lot of my work has been working with young people who have like lost their lives, like gun violence and so on and so forth, and being able to go outside and do like your yoga, do like your breath work in a space that's just natural, you can ground, has been really healing for me, has been really like liberative for me. And so I would encourage churches to like, instead of just like thinking about this idea and going out there and doing it, to go out there and really experience nature. Go out there and maybe this little plot of land would be a great farm, it'd be a great community garden, and that helps the environment. Or this little patch of land doesn't have enough trees, or whatever. Just go out there, be one with the environment, be one with nature, and interrogate it, and investigate it, exegete it. In biblical terms, we exegete, right? Like exegete your environment. What needs to be there, and how can you make your divine contribution to show people that God is in this space, so in the outside space beyond the walls, right? So.
Yeah, that's cool, and I feel like that's a really timely encouragement, because as churches explore the question of what it means to gather in the same space, many churches are just outside or starting outside, and so it's a perfect time for that.
Yeah, take a look around, take a walk. What is?
Yeah, maybe when we gather for worship, we should use the outside and not just try to pretend we're inside.
Exactly. I've heard some churches, it's like as they're outside preaching over the megaphone, community members have kind of been coming out, and it kind of makes a different church experience. It's like, yeah, live into that. Like, what else is? This is a new time to investigate. So
Yeah, that's really cool. I have lots of ideas all of a sudden coming into my head.
that's it. That's what we need. Those ideas.
Yeah. You, with your work, you're kind of involved in a lot of different things that are just moving forward full steam. And I'm wondering if there's anything else that you're working on right now that you're excited about and you'd like to chat about a little bit. And we were talking about advanced peace right before we got on, Police Reform Commission. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. It all intersects to me. So Advanced Peace is a program designed to reduce gun violence, like in our city, in our communities, and so we advocated for that for 2 years. It just got launched. Um, Keyshawn was actually the, kind of a candidate because he lost his brother to gun violence, and that's when I really began to kind of bring him in and teach him like computer programming as a way to like mentor him and help him heal. And this is actually a way for him to heal. So like that at a deeper level. Um, in responding to losing life, he wanted to save more lives, right? And so that's why my excitement about Advanced Peace is that we now have like more Keyshans. We have like 5 change agents who are being equipped and trained, and they're going out there to mentor people in the same way that I mentored like Keyshawn and his brother, so that they can find new rhythms in life, healthy rhythms in life, and people can be healthier and be safe. So I'm excited about Advanced Peace work. They did some really powerful work last week. I'm excited about the team. It's like the first time I can step back and like watch the amazing work that's being done instead of being like stressed out about what has to be done. So I'm excited about them. I have been working on a police commission, so I was part of like the Black Lives Matter march that made the demands. I was invited to the police commission. That ends Thursday. It's been a lot of work, and so I'm excited about being a part of that. And another component thing that we're doing is like young individuals who have been incarcerated before. They're leading a program called participatory defense. And what they do is it's like a court accompaniment thing where they go in, they help people during the court processes, try to get diversion program and support systems built if needed, and just really show the court system a human being. And so they meet once a week, they do presentations, and all of them are formerly incarcerated, so they kind of tell their stories. I think a touching thing for me is like a lot of their stories kind of like integrate me. Like I have a young man by the name of Josiah Cooper who was caught 2 years ago. He had a firearm on him, and so he was arrested. And so he was going to go to jail. But we wrote him some letters of faith for Faith in the Valley, and then we ended up bringing him on in this program called a Peacemaker program. Mm-hmm. And then he did so great there that we ended up hiring him. So he actually leads the work now. And part of his story is this journey from like from being like completely afraid and thinking he's going to lose his body to the criminal justice system to now working and healing others and walking alongside of them. And so I'm excited about that work that they're doing. So that's probably the most powerful thing that I think that we're doing right now is that young group of people is spearheading change and really advocating for people and building support systems. So that's work that can be done too, and helping Josiah and his team advocate for people and humanize people.
Can you say the name of that program one more time?
It's called, I always struggle with it because I talk fast already, and I have so many syllables. And so, but it's called participatory defense.
Okay.
Yeah, so okay. That's fun.
That's really cool. I really appreciate the way that you described what would have happened. You said that he was afraid that he would have lost his body to the criminal justice system. That seemed like an intentional way of explaining what that is.
Yeah, definitely. I think that a lot of these young people that I work with, they fear that you grow up, even myself, we grow up fearing losing our bodies to some sort of system down the line, whether it be homicide, whether it be the criminal justice system. And we know that these things aren't really designed to understand us in context, right? Like they don't, so Josiah was a foster youth, and there's like a foster youth to prison pipeline, so, and there's like a school to prison pipeline. So his whole journey in life, he was like 80% likely to actually end up in jail just based upon circumstances that he had no control over. And so he always lived with the fear that one day, he's a gun violence victim. He got shot and lost a scholarship to like UCLA or something like that. And I'll probably mess up the school, and so he lost his way, and he ended up in that system. But thank God, people who loved him were there to support him and help him find like another trajectory. So I think that's really important. It's what young people face. And I think it's really important for us as a community of faith to step in, intervene. Salvation history is intervention history, to intervene and to help them find new pathways in life and new ways to heal.
Did you say salvation history is intervention history?
It is, yeah. Salvation history is intervention history, right?
Yeah, that's cool. And one of the things that I think I feel like where my thinking has been reshaped is maybe it's the name Advanced Peace really helped me, just because that's like so clearly communicates the idea. But just to think just how important it is to ask questions. What can be done to make peace? Not just the criminal justice system doesn't use that same framework. I think the framework that the church uses needs to be not based on the criminal justice system, but based on our theology. I don't know. Sorry.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, I agree. Amen.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking. I learned 20 more things just in this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So for those of you who are with us watching live, we'll be back next week with another Conversations for Good, Conversations for Common Good series interview on the topic of immigration, and the interviews with Christine Barker, who is the executive director of Fresno Interdenominational Refugee Ministry. So I look forward to seeing you all